Disclosure: the truth about BrewDog. What did we actually learn? That is the simple question I'm going to try and answer today. If you were watching my channel on the night that this TV show aired, which was Monday the 24th of January 2022, then you'll know that I did a live stream watch along, and quite a lot of people tuned in. It seemed everyone was very interested in what this program was going to say. Now, I suspect a lot of the reason that a lot of people tuned in was because this program was also quite difficult to watch, and people were looking for ways and links to watch the actual show. But for the benefit of those that simply couldn't, different countries, different whatever, just couldn't get the damn thing to play, like quite a few people couldn't, I'm going to try and summarise exactly what it was that we learnt about the show, and maybe critique it a bit as well at the same time. So for all intents and purposes, this is the context of a review. If you want to watch it, I guess, spoiler alert, although it's not made up, well, it might be made up, we don't know. But it's presented as factual. But anyway, I'm going to talk about everything that was contained within the show and try and break it down a little bit for you. So let's jump straight into it. What happened first? Well, what happened first was an introduction and a history to BrewDog. They were bigging BrewDog up big time. There was, shots of them bowling beer, smashing beer, exploding things, rockets, the lot. Firework rockets, not big rockets, I hope, or that's probably not completely out of the question with their past marketing history, but you get the idea. This was just the big amp up of the British and more specifically Scottish craft beer revolution. BrewDog did it like no one else when they started, and well, a lot of people really loved them for it, and this was ultimately just the setup in this piece to make them go, but we've found some problems, which we all knew were coming anyway. I will say before I continue that I am doing this broadly from memory. I've not had a chance to watch the entire show again, although I will kind of flick a few bits into this clip just for context. But so if I get the order wrong in terms of how it was actually presented, then I do apologise. But from the best my memory will allow, we then went on to the first kind of, not scandal, but the first bit of a bitter taste, if you like, and it was surrounding funding. Now, BrewDog, as many people will know, for many years ran an equity for punks, what's the term? Incentive. Basically, you bought shares of their business. In return, you got a pint of beer on your birthday. Invited to an AGM, there was you got a nominal percentage off beer at their bars, the sort of thing, and they raised a lot of cash. This way. A lot of people were very happy about this. They were part of the business that they love so much, and yeah, it was going pretty well. What people didn't know when they were doing this, and it wasn't like this happened once, this happened over a series of big crowdfunding fundraiser pushes to get some more equity into the business so they could grow even faster. Now, one interesting thing that I won't touch on more than this because it kind of is just intersecting into lots of parts of the TV show, but apparently there is a book called something like Business for Punks, or The Punk Guide to Business. I'll throw a picture up on screen anyway. And in that book, which is obviously very BrewDog branded, there was a line in it which I very much recall, which was, why spend your own cash when you can flitter away someone else's, or something to that effect. I think the word flitter is wrong there, but you know what I mean. It was a bit dismissive of showing a lack of respect for other people's investments in some way. Now, I'm sure this was written to be, well, punk, given BrewDog's flagship beer name, but even so, in light of what came next, it felt a little bit... It left a bad taste. So in between several of these large kind of give us your money please nice people who already spend your money buying our beer, they sold a load of shares to a large company whose name I've now forgotten, but again on screen now, and the deal that they got was, well, quite a lot better than you or I would have got. Now, understandably, everyone's a bit annoyed, a bit feeling slightly taken advantage of, if you like, with that setup. But of course, this isn't against any laws as far as I'm aware. This seems to be a fairly common business practice in that, well, the people who are investing small amounts of money just to be I guess, part of it don't necessarily bring anything else to the table other than a small bit of cash, whereas a large business or investment company could bring other assets into the mix, I suppose. So again, it's not necessarily wrong, but it doesn't quite feel right either. And while we are on the subject of stocks, anyone remember what some of BrewDog's early campaigns were? Yeah, that stuff. You know, the slating big breweries, which I mean, I've done plenty of, so I'm not innocent in this respect. Although, of the next bit, I certainly am. They kicked out craft breweries from their bars who'd had a kind of buy-in from a major drinks holder like AB InBev or Heineken, and then it would appear, from what this documentary served up, was that the man himself, James Watt, has £500,000 worth of Heineken investments, which again, it's nothing wrong, nothing illegal, but again, it doesn't feel right, and I think that's the point. I mean, it's starting to feel a little bit. I'm going to refrain from using the word I want to use, not because it's an especially bad word, just because it brings on maybe more insinuations than maybe I need it to. But obviously, it's pretty obvious this is getting a little bit hypocritical. So again, just not a very nice. I don't know. Yeah, just feels a bit off. Then we get on to a news report that launched last week in the UK, which was uncovered in the making of this documentary, which is that BrewDog, as far as reports show, imported a lot of beer over the period of 4 years into the US without filling out the proper paperwork. Now, the insinuation in this documentary was that, well, it wasn't just the paperwork that was wrong. They omitted ingredients that weren't actually allowed to be imported at that time, which, to be honest, when I read that news article, I thought, this could be them done. That's a major business crime, surely. Turns out, well, no, because of the way that the US import system works, actually, they would never go after a foreign business, which strikes me as odd, but I guess it's more convenient to go after businesses that you can track down and financially make suffer rather than just... Yeah, I don't know. It all feels a bit odd. From then, we went on to the open letter from ex-BrewDog staff members that launched in the summer of 2021. I say launched like it was an LP or an album release. No, they came to light on the internet through Twitter and various other forums. And it was a load of ex-staff members claiming an array of pretty torrid things that happened during their time at BrewDog. I have read them, but it's been a while, and I don't want to start throwing out absolute accusations, but there was definitely mentions of unfair dismissal, sexism, and a whole raft of other horrendous, if true, allegations, which, again, just not a good look. The interesting thing, though, is that these staff members came from all over the globe, so it wasn't like it was a particularly toxic trait in one bar or one brewery or whatever. This was global, which again just starts making you ask questions. From there, the documentary did interview a few staff members who had been released from the company, and quite a lot of them didn't know why they'd been fired. This was also a common thing. It was just they went in for a meeting one day, nothing was out of the ordinary, and all of a sudden, you're out, mate, leave. No one knows why. Again, I mean, I guess it's allowed, but would you want to work there? I certainly wouldn't want to work there. And at that point, we kind of get to the halfway-ish point in the documentary. There's loads of stuff I haven't covered, including kind of lies on promotions and all sorts of stuff. I mean, they claim to brew beer in an airplane, and they actually didn't, allegedly. They claimed they changed their names to Elvis, both James Watt and Martin Dickey, to get around a legal case from the Elvis Presley estate. And apparently they showed you some paperwork, but again, allegedly didn't. And a load of stuff that was just, I don't know, it all started to feel a bit synthetic punk. Kind of like Busted. But anyway, second half. This is where it doesn't so much take a turn, it's a constant ticking over of evolution. And all of a sudden we are panned over to the US. And the rest of the documentary really takes place there, which is interesting, but BrewDog have a lot of staff in the US, so I guess it makes sense to kind of split it. But there we start to get into the allegations of inappropriate behaviour by James Watt specifically, making women feel uncomfortable, particularly staff members. There was talks of people trying to swap shifts and make sure that female staff members weren't left alone at a bar when he was visiting, which is, I mean, these are horrendous allegations. If they're true, and I said this on the stream, if they're true but were unintended, as in the women genuinely felt that, but he wasn't doing anything that he believed to be untoward, then I feel like by this point I would have hoped to have seen a real show of apologies, solidarities, changes, being super transparent, because it just feels odd. And as far as I'm aware, we haven't seen that. Now, there's been apologies, of course, handed out from time to time, and maybe it all happened business-centrically, which, of course, it's a private company, has every right to do so. But yeah, it doesn't feel like there's much has actually changed from any reports I've heard. Anyway, we don't know for sure. But in addition to that kind of issue with staff, well, there's also allegations of inappropriate behaviour with drunken employees and or customers, which again, it is, I guess, a bit of a blurred line when your industry is nightlife. In a slight sense, it can be hard to determine: is he at work now? Is he just on his social time? Is he having a holiday? Speaking of, a few US staff members proclaimed that he treated the US like his playground, and when he went there, he did whatever he liked. Not quite sure what that meant, but yeah, I think you can read between the lines. There was also a lot of references made to inappropriateness on a rooftop, which during our live stream was used as a bit of a comedic mobility scooter to strong arm in some kind of off-key jokes between serious topics. But yeah, I just hope he's not a fiddler on the roof. And that really is a very crunch summation of what it is that we learned. So we didn't really learn any absolute illegal activity. We learned a lot of general shadiness and some probable illegal activity from the US import thing, but that's kind of it. However, it's important to take this in two guises. Firstly, we've got to point out no one's been charged with anything. There's no real, what I'd call, concrete evidence. There's hard evidence in the form of there's many staff members who have come forward and said something, but at the same time they're almost exclusively ex-staff members. They did talk to a current staff member in the US actually, which was interesting, and they kind of backed up what others were saying, so hopefully they still have a job. But so just keep that in mind. And secondly, we've got to take this at value of the format it's been delivered in. So this was a documentary made by Disclosure for BBC One Scotland, which was, I guess, oddly specific given that half the time they spent not in Scotland and that BrewDog's so nationally and internationally known. I'm not sure why they just kind of crooksed it into a major channel, but only for a small percentage of the country. So it seemed relatively, yeah, you know, a bit of a strange decision. But anyway, but the documentary was very one-sided. They didn't really look for explanations or kind of the counter arguments to any of these things. Now, there's two reasons why that is, of course. One is that they couldn't find anyone to give you a counter argument, which again leads on to more questions, and no one from high up in BrewDog was interested in talking to them. So yeah, that's not great. But the fact that all of this was about James Watt and Martin Dickey went largely without mention in this TV show, given that they're both co-founders, I thought was also very interesting. It felt a bit like, after you got through the first 15 minutes, which was look how good they are and now look how maybe they're not good they are, once you got into kind of the hard damning stuff, it was very James Watt focused. And we have to ask why. What is it that James Watt has done to attract that much interest by the company making this documentary that would make them not really look too much into anyone else? Now, don't get me wrong, all the allegations that are against him are against him, not other people. So that on its own is enough to obviously wave a big flag over there. But if you were Martin Dickey and this was your company and one guy is ruining the reputation of that business by his actions, I would have expected a bit more from him. Do you know what I mean? Just something else. And again, maybe he's shy, maybe he doesn't like talking to people, I don't know. But it was very one-sided, and that always just clicks a little switch to go think about this a bit more cautiously. I think really just treat it with a bit more caution, think about where it's coming from and why. So yeah, as I said, the whole thing was a bit of a character assassination. And that really is my entire summary. I would, however, be very interested to know what you thought about this documentary. Did you watch it? What were your findings? What were your takings from it? What were you most shocked by? In the comments below, please, and we can talk about these on another video. It is still worth emphasising that this is just my reaction really to a bit of footage that the BBC put out. It's impossible to say how much of this is true, how much of this is false. Now, that really is all that happened in the programme, but the fallout after that was also very interesting. Now, as far as we know, James Watt did put out a tweet to say that he was going to take legal action against the BBC for releasing this footage, which was, he effectively said it's full of lies. That tweet on the screen now so you can see it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you would be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Probably not with a BrewDog. Cheers.